To reassemble the hop-up chamber, we go in reverse order. We take the barrel and insert the hop-up rubber on it. The hop-up rubber on the inside will have a little bit of a straight line, if you will, if you can see it right there. That needs to go in this groove over here. So make sure to align that. As long as it's in the groove, push it all the way and make sure it's nice and flush. Now, inserting in the hop-up chamber itself, the easiest way is to continue looking at that groove and point it towards you while also pointing the bottom of the hop-up chamber towards you. And just try to insert it while rotating a little bit and then making sure that that line, that little groove, aligns with the line in the hop-up chamber itself. Push it all the way without using force. Once I'm already all the way in and I can see the lines are pretty nicely aligned, I can go ahead and put the C-clip on. This just presses into place, but then to actually go, as you can see now, it's actually not seated correctly. You can see like gaps and like the plastic being forced there. What I like to do here is press a little bit down with my thumb, and then the barrel itself, rotate, wiggle it a little bit until there you can actually saw it like go into place. So just like slightly wiggle it from side to side until everything clicks into place. From here we reinstall the C-clip all the way in. And now this, for the most part, secures our barrel into the hop-up chamber. Next, we take our knob carrier and make sure the knob is inserted into its little place and all the way in. As you can see now, for example, it's not all the way in. So I need to press it on one side and make sure it's actually completely aligned, as you can see right here. Now this just slots into place. There should be no force involved here. It just should go very smoothly. And once the spring is engaged, you can actually feel it because it's going to spring back. Now the pressure arm can go on top of it. Align the holes as much as possible and then start pressing the pin from the right side to the left side. If it doesn't want to go, you can actually make sure everything's aligned, and then yeah, it should go very easy with your fingers. If you require a little bit more force, then it means you're not properly aligned, so make sure to align it correctly. Then I just like to put my finger on top of the pressure arm so that I can lift up the little edge over there and then rotate the wheel until it engages. Once it's engaged, I can leave it be and just reinstall the C-clip, which can go either way. This can rotate freely around the hop-up chamber. We reinstall the spring on it and the hop-up barrel is ready to go. Next, we move on to the upper receiver and the barrel itself. With our barrel nut. Good. Make sure to give it a nice tug with the tool. The more you tighten this, the more it ensures it's not going to come loose during normal operations and after playing with it a bunch of times. Next step would be to reinstall the dust cover. I'm going to reorient this so that I make it a little bit easier for myself. All right. Now we take the spring and just hold it with our fingers here. We need to pre-tension this part of the spring. I just rotate it towards me, let it engage with the plate, and while holding this, like kind of together, I just roughly place it in the same spot and let the left side actually go a bit loose. From here, I keep a bit of tension with my fingers and reinsert the bar, keeping the little groove towards the front of the gun. Good. Now that's all inserted. I just need to push it all the way until I can see that little groove in this little hole right here. Let me point it for you here. So once you see the groove there, it's quite difficult to show to the camera, but once the groove is there, you take the C-clip from the top, and with something like this little flathead, I can just push it down until it clicks into place. There we go, as easy as that. We check if the operation is correct, and it does seem to be so. Now to reinstall the charging handle, it's very simple. We just insert the charging handle inside. Then we take a Phillips head bit. make sure it is the correct bit for the screw so that there is no wobble. This will be a key point in making this easier. And now with the spring, we try to catch one of the corners. I'm going to show you first and then actually like do it completely. In this orientation, just catch the little hook inside, like so. Yeah. Now that I have it on the screw itself, I can just, with the screw, and as you can see with the whole tool inside, I just pull on the spring slightly until I'm in the hole and then tighten it down. And there we go. Good. Next, we reinstall the flash hider. Remember, this is a 14 CCW thread, so it goes reverse than a normal thread. And from here, I like to tighten it all the way in until it cannot go anymore, but then obviously, as you can see, it's going to be completely misaligned. So I need to turn it back slightly until it's in line. And then slightly tighten the set screw. This doesn't even need that much pressure. You can even do it with fingers and then it's not going to move. It's not going to go anywhere. From here, we can reinstall the handguard. Be mindful the handguard has a locking feature and a centering feature on it, so you will not be able to install it wrongly. You rotate it until it gets engaged fully with the upper receiver. And from here, we just need to tension the two tensioning screws. Do tension one, then tension the other, then return to the first one, and do this a bunch of times because they, until none of them turn easily, that's when you know you have full tension on it. There we go. Now we reinstall the mock bolt, as the default option would be in an open position. And here a little trick, I can actually close the dust cover and now everything's secure, nothing falls on its own, so it just makes life a little bit easier. From here we can reinsert the hop-up chamber, make sure it's all the way in, and now we're ready to receive the lower receiver. Now we can move on reassembling all the parts in the lower receiver, starting with the fire selector, which we took off for the purposes of this video, but like I said, you would generally not need to completely disassemble this, only enough to actually exchange it. So like this, I'm going to prep it first. I'm just going to install the spring so that it's inside and it doesn't, see, it actually falls off, which is not the best case scenario. I would want this to stay in. So for this, it would help to have a little bit of grease. It should have it from stock, so let's see if we can actually use enough until it's yeah, now it should be okay. Good. Now you can see that this can go only in one direction, in this orientation. If you try to do it in the other orientation, it's not going to go because there is a little notch over there which prevents it from rotating. So the way to do this is just hold that little piece like with your fingers as so, insert it in the hole, then put the ball bearing on the semi position and slot the selector on top of it, making sure that it's actually going into the lower part. And once you feel it go in, you can then proceed to reinstall the screw. Once I'm close to it be tightened, I can actually let the selector go into the full auto position and just give it a little tug. You don't have to overdo this. Make sure it operates correctly. So there we have it. Moving on, we now are ready to actually receive the gearbox. So we're going to feed the cable through the buffer tube hole, the battery cable, and the motor cables through the pistol grip hole. From here, the trick is exactly the same as it was in the disassembly. Make sure not to push all the way in so that all the entire trigger is further down, because that will prevent you from slotting in the back. So we just slot it in as such until it can actually go a little bit like so. Then press in the bottom part. But you also need to make sure that the selector plate is actually aligned. For this, I would recommend pushing it all the way to the back as much as possible. So now, actually, as you can see, now it can moving fairly easily. You can also verify this if it's correct, because you can see the selector plate moving inside when you move the selector. Going forward, we're going to reinstall the body pin from the right side to the left. Make sure you have something that you can, like a punch or something that you can hit. Just enough so that it's flush with the body. You don't need to hit harder or like further than that. Then reinstall the body pin from the right side to the left side now. And for this the same, something big, so until it goes all the way in. Going forward, we can reinstall the pistol grip by feeding the cables in these two holes, right here, this one and this one. All the way in, the cables are free, they're not pinched. I see a nice groove over there. So now this will, as we took it off, it's going to be easier to actually use an extension. And with the Phillips heads, we're just going to go one by one. I like to, I'm actually going to try to show it to the camera, even though it's quite hard due to the lighting. But you basically find a hole. Either one at this point doesn't matter, but I recommend not tightening it all the way, the first one, just to make sure that everything is aligned. First, drive in all the screws, and then as a last step, we tension all of the screws. Now that I'm at the last screw, I can actually put a bit of torque in it and make sure it's all the way tightened, all of them, going one by one. Good. Now the fun part, reinstalling the motor. Before we even reinstall the motor, as you can see, the cables are like one in front, one in the back, but we need both cables to be towards the front. So for this, the red cable, we basically want to encourage to have a bend in it, like so, if you can imagine, so that it's basically going to the front, and as you can see it right there, like gripping this part of the grip, just follows it along here and then along the front. That's what we want to do first, to pre-bend it in place and just like kind of hold it there. Red cable on the right side, as we're looking at the gearbox right now, at the receiver right now, and black cable on the left side. Then we take the motor and we install it with the red pin towards the front of the receiver or of the gun. Make sure it's all the way in, and you can feel the tension of the spring. As you can see, it actually once it springs out. So from here, we go and install the red cable first, like the red contact, put on the motor, and then the black one, which goes on top of the red one, and slots into place on the bottom of the motor. If you can get your fingers in there, you can actually use whatever you have to caress the little contact in there. Good. Now the motor tensioner, which this little rib over here should go between the cables, so it should not actually catch on top of one cable or the other. Just make sure you funnel it right between the cables. Press it all the way in with your fingers, making sure the operation is smooth. And if that is the case, then you can go ahead and press the pistol grip close until you can actually hear the click, and making sure that this little screw is all the way back. Everything's good here. To test it, you can actually give it a few taps. This should not pop open on its own. Next, we can install the mag release back. I like to keep a bit of tension on the other side, like with my hand, so that it doesn't go anywhere. And you can do finger tight for now. Make sure it operates nicely, it doesn't catch anywhere. And now we can give it a little bit more of a final tug. From here, the only other thing to install is the spring. Because the spring is completely decompressed now and the piston is fully forward, you can actually do this with your hands. But if not, I can actually show you with the included tool. I just press it and I look inside. As you can see, there is now text on it so that I can see, now it's locked. So I rotate it until I can clearly read the locked message on the spring guide. Further, we just need to install the bolt release, which, be mindful, there is a little spring over here, and its sole purpose is to add a bit of tension to this little button so that it doesn't fly off on its own and it doesn't rattle around. Now that we have almost the entirety of the lower receiver installed, we just need to proceed to install the buffer tube, and then we're going to be ready to marry the two. The buffer tube itself, going to install like so. And then the buffer tube nut, which you can see has a little cutout over there and has the tensioning springs on the side. So this is what it would tension the whole thing once it's pressed inside all the way. For this, I like to keep the cables a little bit at the tension and just do a bend here to grip them in place. Make sure they are aligned, and you can start pressing it with the tool. Once I feel it's all the way in, like it went all the way in at the bottom, now I can start spinning, I can start rotating without loosening the grip on the cables. You will need to do this a bunch of times until it can actually catch and it's fully tightened. Now I can feel it is fully tightened, so I can release and everything should be nice and aligned. Good. From this point on, we can actually marry the top part, the lower receiver, with the upper receiver. And for this, you do have to put a little bit of tension on the side of the bolt release. And then with the other hand, if you just press them together as such, you will see that you will hit a bit of a stop. This is this little stop right here, which is catching on the charging handle. So the way to overcome this, pull the charging handle over it, and now focus on all the other parts until everything is aligned, and you can go marry the two together. From here, the only step that is needed is to press in the pin. You may need to bump it with a hammer a few times, but make sure these two are aligned. Let me actually show you. All right, so to do this again, the pin has a cut over here, so make sure to align it with the top receiver. If it's not aligned, and if you start like putting a lot of pressure in this position, for example, you might actually damage the receiver. So make sure it's in the correct rotation. Do this either by fingers if it allows you, or if not, with pliers. And then you can actually kick it in nice and confidently. Then we reinstall the retention screw. We add the buffer tube, the stock to the buffer tube, and we are completed. This is the entire assembly and disassembly of the SSR4 Mk2. Have fun out there.